Good morning, guys, from Treblinka. Treblinka is a concentration camp and forced labour camp. The location where we are right now is called Treblinka I, which is a forced labour camp. Treblinka II, which we'll go later on in the video, is an extermination camp. So two different purposes for the two different camps in the town of Treblinka in Poland. This area, Treblinka I, was built in 1941. It lasted until 1944. So between those years, there was forced labour here on this site. And as I say, we'll go over to Treblinka II in a bit in this same video to check out the extermination camp here at Treblinka. Now, even though that Treblinka I was created for forced labour and it wasn't created with the purposes of killing people, although they didn't care if obviously people did die, between 10,000 to 20,000 people estimated had died through various means such as executions, starvation, exhaustion, bad working conditions, working long hours through awful conditions, all kinds of different weather, extreme colds in the winters, extreme blistering heat in the summers. They had to do it all, and they had to work mercilessly throughout all of it. And so, of course, with those poor conditions, you're going to have some people who will just die from heat exhaustion or from freezing to death, etc., as well as I say, exhaustion and whatnot. So this side, though it wasn't built to exterminate people, still saw the death of between 10,000 to 20,000 estimated people. There's this museum that we can go in and have a look. So we're just going to go in and check out this museum. So that we just looked at over there was just a small museum. Takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes to look around, depending on how much you kind of read into it. There was just some artifacts left over that they had found, and they just put them into the museum. Right in front of me, we have the sign that says Obóz Zagłady and then Karny Obóz Pracy. So you can read in the English there, penal labour camp and also the extermination camp. Both Treblinka II and I are this way. What I just visited there at the museum was actually neither of them. That was just kind of the museum side, I guess, of Treblinka, and we're having now to walk down this path for, I'm not quite sure how long. It looks like it's at least 2 kilometers on the map to get to Treblinka I, the forced labour camp, and then a little bit down the road is going to be Treblinka II. I think they're connected by something called Czarna Droga, which is called the Black Road, and the Black Road is built by the people who were here at the forced labour camp. So as I explained earlier, there are two parts to Treblinka, number 1 and number 2. Treblinka I is down this road here. So to get from the museum, you have to walk from that way, and you have to walk down this road for what seems to be about 2 kilometers or so. And this road is called Czarna Droga, which is the Black Road. This road, the cobblestones you see right here, were laid by the prisoners at number 1, Treblinka I being the forced labour camp. So the people sent to Treblinka I were sent there to forcibly work and do obviously what they were told to do, as opposed to just being murdered for the sakes of being murdered. En route to Treblinka I, down here via the Black Road, you do actually walk past Treblinka II, which is on my left right here. This is the extermination camp side of it, but we will go to Treblinka I first. We will check out Treblinka I, the forced labour camp. We will make our way back down towards here, and we'll have a proper look at Treblinka II just on my left hand side right here in a bit. But as I walk on this road right here, it is kind of crazy to understand and to see that this was all laid by prisoners who didn't want to be here, and they were forced to build this road by the Nazis. The majority of it is original. It said on the sign back there that there is a little bit of it that has been replaced, but they've done their best to preserve the bits that have been replaced as best they can, with the shape and everything, so that it's as original as it can be. But it says that the majority of this road that I'm walking on right now is original and built by the prisoners from Treblinka I at the forced labour camp. So as I walk down the black road right here, I'm reminded by a sign that I'll show you in a second that says that not only is this road made of stones, as you can see down here, but as I go forward, the road also contains fragments of something called matzevot, which is Jewish tombstones. So they took broken down Jewish tombstones from a nearby cemetery, brung them here, and they started using the broken down tombstones, matzevot, as pieces of stone to lay down in the road right in front of me here. So from this point onwards, it contains the matzevot, and this is the sign here. In accordance with the recommendations of the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, the Black Road is closed due to the fact that it contains the fragments of matzevot, Jewish tombstones. Movement of visitors' motor vehicles have been suspended, and as I showed you here, we've got it coned off now to show respect, obviously with it containing fragments of tombstones. I mean, that's pretty messed up. I mean, obviously everything that happened during this time was messed up. I've been fascinated with concentration camps, World War II, that whole thing, you know, for a long time, because it is a fascinating topic, but you always find new information that just constantly surprises you. Just when you think you've heard it all, and then there's just something like this. I'd never even heard of the word matzevot until that sign there, so I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. I've just never heard of the Nazis forcing people to build this road, which also contained Jewish tombstones. It's just such a wild thing. And you imagine being those people who are being forced to build this road that I'm walking beside right now that I'm on the left side on this dirt road. But imagine just being forced to build this road, which is, I think, in total about 3 kilometers long when you include the entire distance, knowing that it contains fragments of matzevot as well. Because, you know, a lot of these people would have been Jewish here. It's just being cruel to the next level for the sakes of it. I'm trying to have a look now, but obviously I'm not sure how big or how small these fragments of the tombstones are going to be. It could be pretty much any of these right here. I wouldn't know. Oh shit. Guys, look at this. This is a fragment of one of the tombstones, and you can tell that it's so because it's got the Hebrew inscription on it. That is wild. And that's just one of the many remains here on this road. I was just walking by talking and I just saw it and I had to take a second to kind of see it. There's another one right in front of me. Just down here. I'm sure that's one because you can see again the inscriptions. Basically, I'm just looking out for any that have the Hebrew inscriptions on it, basically. So it is estimated that at Treblinka, including 1 and 2, that up to 920 or so thousand people were murdered here. And I was just curious at this road because I'm just walking down this road and I'm thinking, how many individual pieces of stone or rock or matzevot or whatever is there in this road to make up the Black Road in total with the 3 kilometer road? And I asked ChatGPT because there are no official numbers of how much makes up this road, and I asked it for a ballpark figure of its best estimates given the length of the road and knowing roughly how big the pieces are and everything else. And it came up with a figure of 150,000 individual pieces of stone and rock and matzevot and whatever else was used to make up this 3 kilometer road. Which means that every single stone, rock, matzevot or any other piece of material used to make up this 3-kilometer road right here that I'm walking beside right now, every single piece represents roughly 6 individual people that were murdered here at Treblinka, just at Treblinka, not in any other camp in the war, not in Auschwitz or in Sobibor or in Dachau or Sachsenhausen, just at Treblinka. Each one of these on the floor here represents roughly 6 people that were killed in this camp, and it just goes on and on and on. And like I say, I know that's just a ballpark figure because there's no official number posted, so I did have to use ChatGPT to kind of get a rough estimate. But I just wanted something to kind of visualize how many people actually died at this camp. Because you can say big numbers like 6 million people were killed in World War II through extermination camps and whatnot. You can say that 920,000 people died at just this one camp. 2 million Jews were killed in Auschwitz, and the numbers go on and on. But the human mind isn't really built to understand numbers so large, and I think something like I've done there, like kind of to try and represent the numbers a bit better, in my opinion anyway, is like a much more easier way to understand that 6 people, that stone is 6 people, that stone is 6 people, and then you just look up and there's all these rocks and stones and pieces of fragments of this and that and the other, and they all represent these people that should have never died the way that they did. Using the same maths, if we were to take the figure of 6 million people that died in World War II as a whole, and we were also to look at this same road, each individual rock or whatever that was made to make this road would represent 40 people. 40 people there, 40 people, 40 people, 40 people, etc. 40 people who were slaughtered, murdered, gassed, shot, hung, the list goes on, at various different locations around Europe. And like I say again, maybe it's easier for me in person to visualize that because I'm physically walking beside this road right here. But when you just look at the numbers and you start to realize how much there is, I mean, just of this road alone, there's just like what seems to be a never-ending path of stone and rock and whatnot. But then when you obviously get this in times by 40, if I had to walk this 40 times, I don't even know how long it would take me. It would be an absurd amount of time just to walk past what would represent every single person that died in World War II. Can't even fathom those numbers, can't even fathom any of it really. And just one last thing to kind of visualize this while I'm on that train of thought. This is a 3-kilometer road, and each one of these represents 40 individuals in the whole of World War II. And so if you were to make it so that each one of these were just one individual per rock, per stone, per mativot, then you would need a road that I'm walking down right now as long as 120 kilometers in order to have enough of these to represent just one individual. So you would have to walk down a road like this for 120 kilometers before you'd reach from start to finish, just to have stones to represent those people. So we have a map right here, and it says we are here at this corner. Right here next to us, we have just these 2 concrete poles, and that's all that stands at this location here. I'm not sure how much remains further up, or that don't remain anymore. But these 2 concrete poles are the only thing that remain of the gate that you would go through to enter into Treblinka I, the forced labour camp. That map that I just showed you there showed that this is the corner, as you saw on the map, and it would go down that way and down that way, and then obviously kind of makes like a square around. But nothing really here, at least, seems like it's survived over the years. As I say, all that remains here of the gate is just these two concrete poles. So we'll walk down and see if anything else has survived inside of the camp. And here's another look at it. We're in the top right there at the camp gate. The guardhouse would have been right next to us where we're stood now. And we're going to walk down this road here and see if there's anything left in this area, or whether nowadays it's just a field, because currently that's kind of what it looks like right here. This is my view. We are technically in Treblinka I right now, and we'll see if there's anything to see. There will be little plaques, I imagine, around to explain what would have been there if there are no remains here. I genuinely don't know at this point in time how much remains of this part of the camp and how much has been destroyed or overgrown or whatever else. Well, I've walked down this path, and as you can see, nothing has really changed. It is still just forested. So I am led to believe that pretty much nothing of Treblinka I, the forced labour camp, remains pretty much, apart from two concrete posts, which was the main gate, and this like track that we're walking down. There is something up ahead of us. I don't know that's Treblinka I though, but we'll go and check it out. But otherwise in Treblinka I, unfortunately, nothing seems to have remained from when it was in use. Okay, so a short walk through this forest from the gate that we saw over there, the remnants of what the gate was, entrance into Treblinka I. I walk down this forest and we get to where I'm stood right now, and then this is all that remains of Treblinka I, the forced labour camp. It pretty much is just a field nowadays with a bunch of plaques all dotted around explaining what was there. I first heard about Treblinka, and I think this will be more applicable to Treblinka II, but I first heard about Treblinka a few years ago. I watched a Netflix series called The Devil Next Door. This is a series that basically highlighted and showed the trials of a guy called Ivan Demjanjuk, or his English name was John Demjanjuk. And he was a Ukrainian guy who had ties with various concentration camps, Sobibor, for example, and one of which was Treblinka. And they were never able to properly convict this guy of his crimes, but the evidence was so damning, and in my personal opinion, I believe he was the guy for what it's worth, but the evidence was so damning that this Ivan Demjanjuk was Ivan the Terrible, a sadistic, abusive guard here at Treblinka. And like you'd have to watch The Devil Next Door on Netflix to get an understanding of like the whole trials and also what this guy did to people here. But it's absolutely abhorrent, things that I wouldn't be able to say on YouTube. But I just read a plaque and I want to show you guys, because though it may not be about Demjanjuk, I just want to show you the kind of things that they went through and that the guards would do to people. I'll just leave you for a few seconds to read it. And that's just the first plaque I read at the entrance here, when this whole field is maybe 40 to 50 plaques, I would estimate. So there's a lot here to read, not so much to see, unfortunately. But I just wanted to briefly describe or reiterate John Demjanjuk's, or Ivan Demjanjuk's, story, at least from what I understand of it, from that Netflix series mostly. I was so intrigued in it, and I don't want to spoiler alert the series for anyone who hasn't watched it, but I guess I already have done actually. He was never found guilty. He was acquitted, or whatever the word is. He got through the trial without ever being found guilty. I remember watching the series and watching Ivan Demjanjuk in these trials from the 90s constantly shouting "Nie vinny, nie vinny," which means "I'm innocent." I can't remember, he must have said like Yanjevini or something. I can't remember the exact pronoun for like I in Ukrainian, to be honest, but I just remember this Niewini because I then found out that it was the same word in Polish as well, and so there was kind of a connect there for me personally. But I remember watching the trials, him shouting Niewini, Niewini, I'm innocent. And the thing is, there's so much evidence against this John Demjanjuk guy that to me it just seemed obvious that he was Ivan the Terrible, the guard, like an infamous guard here at Treblinka and at Sobibor and a few others that he went to in his time while he was an SS guard. But he never admitted to what he did. He, all the way up until his death, at the age of, I think, 91, all the way up to his death, he never once admitted that he was associated with the Nazis or that he worked here or that he did any of those atrocious things, some of which you just read on that board there as an example of what just some of these guards would do, or probably most of these guards. I don't know, there must have been some humanity with some of these guards at least, because at the end of the day, you're still doing this to other people. But the thing is, at the same time, these people were in charge of other people which were dehumanized to a point of which they didn't look at them as humans. So it's just such a screwed up situation overall. I just remember watching The Devil Next Door on Netflix, and that story stuck with me, and I remembered it for this particular trip in Poland because I'm now in Treblinka. I made my way here to come and visit this camp due to watching that series, because I learned about this camp through that series a little bit, but also afterwards through my own independent study as well. I just found it so fascinating, like the whole series, because the series obviously is about the trials of what Demjanjuk went through, and there's archive footage of him going through it in the 90s. And yeah, anyway, like it was a whole crazy series. I would recommend watching it to get an insight on like that particular guy. He was sadistic in every way, like he was so sick and twisted. And I think reading his body language as well while watching those trials, though I'm no expert, it really just told me that this Demjanjuk guy is not a nice guy. Though obviously other people there, his family and whatnot, would say otherwise. Obviously, you know, they may not have never known the truth about his atrocities here. But as I say, for what it's worth, I personally full-heartedly believe through the evidence of that series and what I've looked up afterwards, that John or Ivan Demjanjuk is indeed Ivan the Terrible. And all of that he did was right here in Treblinka. Probably not Treblinka I. I imagine it would be over where we're going to check out in a minute, Treblinka II. But as I say, because I read that, I just wanted to show you guys and then tell that story, because I think it's quite an important story to tell. So right now I'm going to have a look around this area where all the buildings are in this aerial view. Obviously we've walked down from that corner where the gate is all the way down to here. So I'm going to have a little look around this field. I'll show you a few plaques and things if there's anything of interest. Okay, so we're about to have a look at the gravel quarry, basically a quarry in which the people from Treblinka I, the forced labour camp, people would go and work in the quarry just in front of me right here. And it says that they were forced to work over 12 hours a day. And then it says in the sign here that many of them died from exhaustion or as a result from the guards' terror. As I explained earlier, there were many deaths even at Treblinka I, even though it wasn't an extermination camp. This right here is a plaque that translates to gravel pit, place of slave labour. And then right above it is the gravel quarry in which the people from Treblinka I were forced to work over 12 hours per day, every single day. Many of them died through exhaustion and through the terror of the guards. So guys, we are now going to enter into the execution site. Half a kilometre up the road from Treblinka I, the forced labour camp. The prisoners in the forced labour camp that were deemed not suitable to work anymore were walked down this road for half a kilometre. They would get to here, and then eventually they'd be executed by the Ukrainian guards. And right here is the execution site. We have crosses that resemble individual people that were murdered here. Here, it was estimated that about 20,000 people were killed from Treblinka I, right here in the execution site. This execution site does not include the murders of people that were murdered in Treblinka II, which would have been the other 890,000 or so murdered here at Treblinka. It's crazy because I've walked from over there, that's the entrance just there roughly, and then I've walked, and all of this is filled with crosses, and it just keeps going. It goes way over there, and there's also over there's kind of a little off branch where there's more down on the side. And these are just the people that they have on record, because it's an estimated how many people died here just in Treblinka I. It's estimated between 10 to 20,000. They don't know the exact number because not every single person would have been documented, but obviously all of these people were documented. The names, the date of birth, the date of death. Some people only their names. So yeah, it's quite interesting and crazy, bizarre, eerie to see this and to see just how much was documented and how much was saved. These are all people, this represents all these people that escaped Treblinka II, which is an almost certain death camp. 890,000 people at Treblinka II roughly were killed in the years that it was active. So these people here that are represented by these crosses escaped Treblinka II, almost certain death, to go to the forced labour camps where it's less likely for you to die. You can survive a lot easier than you can in the death camp. And all these people here then working to the bone more than 12 hours a day, every day. And at some point it was decided that they were no longer needed, whether because they were too weak or whatever the reason is, and they were marched half a kilometre from their camp where they worked down to here just to be murdered. So these people were the unfortunate souls that escaped certain death to go to a labour camp, only to then find themselves in the same situation, the same end that they would have found themselves at if they would have gone to the death camp anyway. These poor, poor people. You just imagine each individual cross is somebody who walked down that walkway, who felt fear and terror and all these other emotions you can't even imagine that they would have been feeling, and knowing that they were walking to an eventual point in which they were going to be shot, or however they killed them. I'm not quite sure actually how they were murdered, but for them to walk to a particular point in this field in which their life will end, and I don't know, it's mad to think about the amount of people just here alone that would have felt that. And this, with all due respects to these people, is only a drop in the ocean compared to Treblinka II. And then the whole of Treblinka is just a small part of what other camps, Auschwitz were, and Dachau, Sachsenhausen, Bergen-Belsen, Sobibor. The list goes on. There's so many camps in Europe, and it happened at all of these places. And as I say, we've got these on the left, but then just here it branches off to the right, and we have even more crosses that are there to memorialize those who were remembered, those whose names were documented, whose date of death was documented. Quite a lot of them you just have the names and no dates of death. Okay guys, that has been it for Treblinka I. We've just checked out Treblinka I, the forced labour camp, and currently I'm still in the execution site of Treblinka I. I think it's time for us to make our way back down towards the entrance of the site, which will make our way down to Treblinka II, and we'll go and check out Treblinka II. Treblinka II is where many more people died compared to what we've seen so far. As I mentioned, through rough estimates in my head, it'd be around 890,000 people or so, 900,000 people that died in Treblinka II that we're about to go to. So as heavy as this has been so far, looking at the forced labour camp, and particularly here at the execution site, I feel like Treblinka II is going to be a lot more eye-opening. So let's move over to Treblinka II and let's find out what exactly went on over there. So earlier on in the video, I went up that way towards number 1. This is now Treblinka number 2. As you can see there, extermination camp on the sign, and it's straight in front of me here. And this is what you see on the immediate entrance of camp number 2. I think this is kind of like a map of the whole place. So just upon entrance, you have these 2 big walls. You've got here the Polish Obóz Zagłady, which is extermination camp in English. Let's see if this one has anything on this side. There's no writing to be translated. So that's just the entrance into camp number 2. This one's a bit more busier with people. Where we've just been has been pretty much just me on my own. There are some groups up ahead. So this one seems to be a bit more preserved, a bit more where the history is. There's a few things I'm looking at right now, like this, which hopefully I'll find out what they are in a minute. Look at this site right here, guys. I'm going to find out in a minute exactly what all this is. We've got a couple of tour groups, one over here, another to the left, both seeming to be Jewish tourists who are coming here to obviously learn about what happened. And I can't even imagine what they must be feeling learning about their own history in this kind of way. But anyway, right in front of me we have, as I've shown, all of these stones. So this is just encompassed by loads of different shaped and sized rocks, all that have different words inscribed into them. Some of these rocks I recognise as cities in Poland, Warszawa, Białystok, but others I didn't recognise the words, which seemed like they could have been names, or I'm not quite sure. Names of people, that is, as opposed to names of cities. So I don't know if it's a mix of names of cities and people, or if it's something else. Just here right in front of me we have the same thing, a graveyard of rocks with different words writing inscribed onto them. We have here Biała Podlaska, which is a region in Poland. I wonder if it's to pay homage to the people, to commemorate them from these different places. People from all these different places ended up here to, be exterminated. We just have thousands of these rocks just all across. Here's another place I recognise, Sandomierz. It's a small town down towards the south of Poland. I think these represent places that people came from that ended up in this camp. Now, as I've mentioned, we are in Treblinka II. Treblinka II, this was an extermination camp, which means they were only sent here for the pure purpose to be exterminated. No work or anything like that. So the majority of people that ended up here died immediately upon entry. Within an hour upon entry, they would have been dead already. So the people that come to this site right here, there was nothing for them to do other than for them to be exterminated, for them to be murdered by the Nazis. So I mentioned that 700 to 900,000 people here died. Pretty much everyone who arrived here at this camp immediately died within an hour of arriving here. 700 to 900,000 people died here. This camp was operational from July 1942 until October 1943. 15 months, and all of those deaths happened and occurred here. Less than 100 people survived this camp when this camp was eventually liberated and broken free. Less than 100 people survived. The majority of those 100 people are of Jewish descent. There's a very small pool of those people, of the known 100 survivors from Treblinka II, who were not Jewish. Victims that came here, as I say, were immediately killed within an hour or so of being here, and they were normally killed via gas chambers. With the death toll of 900,000 on the upper estimates of things, that makes Treblinka II, this site right here, the second most deadly concentration camp ever in World War II, just behind Auschwitz, which to my memory had about 1 million deaths to Auschwitz. So this isn't too far off of Auschwitz. Unlike Auschwitz, which was a mixed camp, which means that they had not just Jews, but they would also have Poles and Germans, and they would have disabled people, gypsies, and the list goes on. The majority of Treblinka was just Jews. Unfortunately, there are almost no records of the people that arrived here and were subsequently killed, murdered, because the Nazis during Operation 1005 tried to destroy all evidence of the people ever existing and ever being here at this camp. And unfortunately, they managed to destroy quite a lot. So to this day, a lot of these people are unknown. And I imagine that's why the estimates of the deaths are in a big range of 700 to 900,000 people. So to give you a bit of information on these right behind me, because I didn't know coming in here, I'm trying to learn, but there's not much here unless you have a tour guide. Right in front of me, we have these headstones that you've seen now in most of these shots in this part of the video. There are over 17,000 of these stones right here, and over 300 of them have various city names engraved into them, and that actually represents the destroyed Jewish communities in these cities, such as Warsaw, in Krakow, in Sandomierz, in all these other cities that I've seen as I've walked through. These are not individual graves, but instead just a representation to show just how many people arrived here and ended up subsequently dying. There's only 17,000 or so of these rocks, but up to 700 to 900,000 people died here. So right behind me you have what is by far the biggest and most easiest thing to see right here. That's the main memorial stone. And just behind it, where I'm stood now, right in front of me, we have a burn pit. As you can imagine, this is where all the dead bodies would have been placed and then burnt. After bringing them here, gassing the people within hours of arriving at this site, they would have dumped all of them into this pit and set them on fire. Just one of the ways they would try and hide what they were doing here. The Nazis wanted to try and get through as many people as possible in regards to these extermination camps. And in order for them to do that, they discovered, or they thought, that the easiest and quickest way to get through people was to mass gas them and then to mass burn them. And then it would be a case of on to the next group of people, the next train load. They didn't care. 15 months to kill 700,000 people, even on the lower end of the estimates. It's a lot of people to kill in 15 months. So taking 700,000 and 900,000 and dividing them by the 15 months and then dividing them again by 30 for a rough 30 days per month, which obviously give or take. But this then estimates that per day, between 1,555 to 2,000 people died here for 15 months, every single day in a row straight. Between 1,500 to 2,000 people here and dead, here, dead. That is absurd. I can't even imagine how they were able to even bring so many people into an area like this so frequently. It's mind-boggling to me. I just don't understand it in such a short amount of time. That makes you realize just how short of time that is, and also just how much the Nazis really wanted to try and, for lack of a better wording, get through these victims. They wanted to just get this train load, kill them, get the next lot in, kill them. It was just absolutely abhorrent and horrible, horrible stuff that they did, as dark of a thought that it is. But can you imagine just having to deal with that many people. You kill 2,000 people a day and you're trying to burn through that many bodies every day. They represent one pit over there, but you're most probably going to need a couple more than that in order to keep up with that demand. It's one of those things, you can't even imagine it. It's so from a different time, in a different world to what we know of today, and it's just mental. Can't even really describe it. Just stood at the edge right now and just looking out into this open field. Right now it's pretty peaceful, all things considering, pretty calm. It's full of animals, and the wildlife is obviously growing back, and insects and everything. And yet, let's say 80 to 90 years ago, it was a completely different sight. If I was to stand right on this spot and then looking back 80 to 90 years ago, back to 1942, 1943, 1944, this would have been a completely different sight. A sight that hundreds of thousands of people would have been slaughtered for no reason other than the fact that, you know, they're Jewish. Absolutely vile. Right here in front of me, we have a picture of a crane digging mass graves. So that's how big they were. They couldn't even do it by hand. They had to dig them using machinery such as cranes to keep up with the amount of people they were trying to get rid of. They probably couldn't burn all of them. Well, that right there is Treblinka II. Right in front of me, we have what I believe is a representation of how so many people arrived here at Treblinka II, which was by train, by the Nazi concentration camp trains that you had rolling up at the different camps, including Auschwitz and Vught and Sachsenhausen and all these other places that would have people arrive by train. Right in front of me, we have these. And as I say, they're more of a representation of the train tracks as opposed to the real thing itself. I'm not quite sure why there's a representation. I'm not quite sure why the original train tracks are not here anymore. But these are the show where the train would have stopped. Obviously, where I was just stood up there is the platform, the place in which the people would have got off the wagons. They would have walked down towards there, only to be killed, only to be gassed. This is Treblinka station. From all around Poland, trains would have come and stopped right here to drop off Jews in the train loads. They would have waited here for the engine of the train to swap over to a smaller one so it can take them another 2 kilometers down the road to where we've been today in this video, to Treblinka II, where they are going to be immediately gassed upon entry. Right here we have a plaque in Polish, and translated it says, "In this place was a railway sidetrack where Jews and Romas locked in wagons waited for transport to the gas chambers in the nearby Treblinka II extermination camps." And this spot right here as well is very important because this would mark the very last view for all those almost 1 million people that would have arrived here by train over the few years, well really over the 15 months that this was operational, that Treblinka II was operational. Treblinka I was operational for a little longer, but Treblinka II was operational for 15 months. And so for those 15 months, this right here would have been the very last view for those almost 1 million people on the outside world before heading 2 kilometers that way to where we've seen today, to meet their ends, to be gassed to death, to be slaughtered and exterminated by the Nazis. So this is very symbolic right here. We've got the train tracks right here. Again, not the real train tracks, but instead more of a symbolism like at Treblinka II. I'm not sure again why the original isn't here, but this is what we're left with today. The train tracks that lead down to here. Opposite, we have the sign, Stacja Treblinka. And there's not much more here, but it's more of a symbolism, as I say. You imagine the wagon loads of people that would have arrived here, as I say, up to 2,000 people per day. And in fact, that number's an estimate, but I did read somewhere that there were certain days where the number was just way higher. There was the emptying of the Warsaw Ghetto. There was a day when they decided to kick everyone out of the Warsaw Ghetto, shove them into wagons, send them right here where I'm stood right now. They would then be sent 2 kilometers down the road to Treblinka II, and I can't remember the date that happened or the dates that happened, but when that happened, in one single day, over 10,000 people were slaughtered in the gas chambers just down the road to where we were. And this is where those 10,000 people would have sat and had their last view of the outside world and pretty much their last view of life before they were exterminated. So this is a very important and symbolic location. As I say, for all those thousands of people, and in fact almost 1 million people, we're talking 900,000 people that were estimated at the upper end of things at Treblinka II. Then this site right here was the last site for all those people, and it's a very sad thought to think about, that the last thing they would have seen would have been something similar to this. I'm not sure obviously if the road would have still been here or anything, but it would have pretty much looked like this. Probably the train tracks would have been where this grass is now, because the tracks would have had to have obviously gone down for another 2 kilometers. In the post-war years, this flower bed was located at Treblinka railway station. It was the first commemoration of this place. That means that this flower bed here was the first commemoration of Treblinka. Just a simple flower bed, and yet it's there still all those years later. Here we have a map, just kind of overview of where we've gone today. So currently we're right here in the village of Treblinka. And then if you go up and around down the road 2 kilometers, or apparently 4 kilometers, although it said 2 on my maps, we get to Museum Treblinka. You got Treblinka II right here and Treblinka I over here. So Treblinka I is actually further away than Treblinka II. But when you look at it on a map, it makes it a lot easier probably for you guys to realize kind of the route that we walked today. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I know obviously these kind of videos are quite heavy to watch. I like to visit these places personally, even if I wasn't recording and documenting them. But also I just like to document them as I visit them and try and give some kind of information and just share my experience of being here, but also just share what it's like in these camps and just like the history of these camps to the best that I can. Obviously I'm trying to get better at sharing information and things, but it's my goal to visit these places and learn about the history and share that history with you guys when I do visit these places, because I think it's very important. Something like World War II I think is very important to understand and to never repeat, as the Polish mantra is, nigdy więcej, like never again. I just think it's invaluable to learn about these places. I know a lot of people obviously know about Auschwitz and maybe Dachau to a lesser degree, but there's so many different places, even just looking at concentration camps and extermination camps in Europe, that people aren't aware about. And just as I travel Poland and Europe in general, for me it's an important part of history, and it's a no-brainer really to come to these places and to experience them. And for me, being who I am and someone who likes to document life and make videos and share those videos, it only makes sense for me to also share it in a video for you guys the best I can, and to try and be as respectful as I can, and to try and share as much information as I can that's interesting but also factual as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like I say, I know it's heavy, but these things are, history is pretty tough and brutal. But it's so important to remember these people that didn't have a chance to get out of this situation, that didn't have a chance to fight for themselves. And it's just important to understand World War II in general, in my opinion. And a big part of that is indeed the camps and the Nazi regime. And maybe for some of you out there, you're not able to physically come here for whatever reason, and instead you can visit these places via vlogs such as this. I have now been to Auschwitz and Stutthof and Treblinka on this channel in a vlog. I have also been to Vught in the Netherlands. I never actually released that vlog on this channel because I felt like that vlog was a bit not that great, let's just say. I did release it on another channel. It is on a playlist on this channel, but I didn't really feel happy about that vlog because I kind of didn't give a lot of information. I was kind of just walking around. I was super tired on that day. So anyway, that's not important, but what I'm trying to say is I've been to these places a few times and it's important for me to share them with you guys. As I say, for educational purposes, but also for those who cannot visit physically for whatever reason, whether it's a disability or monetary reason or whatever, you can watch videos such as this and it's a capsule in time of what this place looked like and also the history of this place on this very day that I visited. And I think that's important to just keep educating people on the history of World War II, but also on the history of other atrocities similar to this. World War II is by no means an exception. There have been other things in history that have been just as brutal, just as bad. It just so happens, and just the way that things work out, that World War II, Hitler, the Nazis, concentration camps, the Holocaust, all of that just happens to be a lot more well known than many other atrocities that have happened around the world and in history. So I just find it fascinating and also important to share these things, not just with you guys, but just in general with anyone who ends up watching this video. So I will continue to go to places such as this and share experiences like this. You know, concentration camps, for example, every time I'll visit a new one from now, I will make videos on it. Some have more to show than others. Today, actually, Treblinka didn't have all that much physically, but in terms of representation, I think Treblinka had a lot to resonate with. You know, there wasn't much of buildings left here, but when you realize that Treblinka wasn't really a place where people lived, it was a place where people came and immediately died in Treblinka II. Treblinka I, I still don't know why there's no buildings left there. They've all seemed to be flattened for whatever reason. When you look at Treblinka and you look at Auschwitz, for example, both completely different camps, or at least built for different reasons. Auschwitz actually housed people and kept prisoners in Auschwitz, and I really don't like calling them prisoners, but that is what they're called. But prisoners imply that they did something wrong, and so I hate using that word, by the way. But in Auschwitz, the prisoners were in buildings, the prisoners were there, and they lived for months before potentially dying, and a lot of them obviously did. Here, there was almost no hope. There was nowhere for them to live. They arrived by train right here in front of me, just here. They went down the road 2 kilometers to Treblinka II. If they didn't make it to Treblinka I, the forced work labor camp, then they were going to die. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you thought of this video, genuine thoughts. Let me know how I can improve videos like this going forward in the future. I would like to obviously make these videos as good as possible while still keeping them as respectful as possible, and you just paying homage to the people, the victims, and also to the museums themselves. So let me know if there is anything that you would like to be added to these kind of videos. If you would like more information, or I don't know, whatever it may be, let me know and I will see what I can do for the next one whenever I visit another concentration camp, labor camp, or any other kind of site that is related to World War II and the Nazis in some kind of way or another. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Till then, have a great day and peace out.